Welcome to the cloud. Today I'm joined by Sophia Kornick, who I will let introduce herself, but I met her in college. She has since started her own production company and has been very successful at it called Soko Productions, and I'm super excited to dive into the details on it. So Sophie, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Sophie Kornick, and like you said, I started my production company, Soko Productions, about a year and a little bit more than a half ago. And we do all kinds of productions. It started in experiential production and music festivals, and now we do like a lot of Web3 integrated events, and kind of help brands like harness the tools of Web3. And we also do like photo video campaigns, and just like storytelling in a visual medium.
That's amazing. I've seen over your social medias over the past year, so I've seen some of the projects you've been working on that you've posted, including Summer Smash in Chicago, Juice World Day. Could you tell me a little bit of like how you got into that and like what it was like, to be working in artist relations?
Yeah, I actually got started by going to there's a nonprofit in Chicago called Young Chicago Authors, and they do a lot of great work, kind of with youth artists, specifically with poetry, and they put on like one of the largest poetry slams in the country, and it became like kind of a talent seeding zone in Chicago. And I am not a performer, but I've always loved being around art. So I just started going, and at the end, like stacking chairs and being like, hi, I'm Sophie. Does anybody need help with their shows? I like working. And I think just like a willingness to work in my free time. Like I had a job at the Illinois Housing Development Authority, which is like a kind of like a quasi-government bank. But like when I had free time, I was going to open mics. I was like going to other people's shows. I was introducing myself. And I didn't really have a lot of skills that were applicable in the industry, but I just had like a willingness to like move shit around or like clean up a spill or like take it to the door. And I think like being vocal about your desire to help has always been how I've gotten my foot in like a lot of interesting doors.
That's awesome. Yeah, that'll get you a long, long way. So what was it like to be working with some of these artists? Do you have any funny stories that you want to bring up? Anything like that?
Yeah, I love working. I just got off a call kind of like going over the credentials for Summer Smash this year, but I think like one of my favorite festival stories that just kind of like, I'm not going to say the artist, but like points to how like kind of crazy these festivals get was it was a festival called Man Beyond the Beach, and one of our headliners pulled up in an SUV, and like we had been very clear in advancing that like you could come in an SUV, but then you'd have to get in a golf cart because it was about a mile to the backstage area and it wasn't really suitable for cars. And I had this artist be like well informed about this ahead of time, and they got there and they were just like, nope, I'm not getting out of my car. If you can't get in my car to backstage, then I guess we're not having a show. And I was like, okay, great. So I radio like command and I'm like, what do I do? And they're like, you got to clear a path for the car. And I have never been a fast runner. I like, especially in the pandemic, like started running just kind of like to clear my brain. But when I say run, I mean like a slow grandma jog. Like if you've ever ran on a track, you could beat me. Like I'm just trying to get moving. And so they're like, you got to clear a path for this car. And I start running ahead of the car and like clearing people out of the way, but the car could only go as fast as I could run. And I'm like sprinting, like I'm really trying. And like we get maybe 3/4 of the way there. And I'm like, we got to take a break, guys. And I'm just like, this car full of like a very prominent artist, and his entire team is just like waiting as I catch my breath and like have to continue running. But I think like little things like that is just like, to be a producer, you have to be willing to do like whatever job is not happening in that moment.
Right.
Like if you've done your job really, really well, most of the roles will be filled, but things always go wrong. And kind of as a producer, you're like, okay, well, when that thing goes wrong, I'm going to fix it. I don't know what's going to go wrong and I don't know how I'm going to fix it, but I guarantee I'm going to figure it out.
That's funny. That's a really funny story. But you're right. You're right. It's like there's something that's always going to go wrong, and got to be willing to just jump on whatever spot needs to be filled. You're absolutely right. So how has the recent shift in from going from Web 2 productions to now integrating Web 3 in your business? How's that been? What is your approach to it?
I think that the most exciting thing for me about Web3 is like, I mean, the blockchain enables us to like track ownership to a digital item. And I think that like getting artists to understand that like creates a lot of power for them in this new economy has been like the most interesting thing for me. And then kind of like trying to have corporations and like brands and big galleries like recognize that this is where things are moving, and they get the choice in these next year, 2 years, to either be like an early adapter or somebody who like watches and sees how people utilize it. And I think where I fit into that is like really explaining to brands the opportunity, and then also like helping them make the connections with the people who like know how to do the thing. So I think like recently a lot of brands have been interested in like the AR VR part of like Web3. And so like helping them utilize that has really looked like, how do we integrate that into an event? So like I had an event for Nike Diamond, which is their like baseball, softball kind of grouping. And we wanted to have like a VR baseball game as part of it.
Oh, that's sick.
But it's super sick, but like it's not the most visually stimulating to watch someone in an Oculus play a batting game.
You're
so
right.
like we helped them develop like, we built these like batting cages, but they weren't really out of cage, they were out of net, and they were like individual gaming consoles, and we had TVs showing like what the VR person was showing, and we had the fans like their peers cheering them on, and we like a way to monitor the volume, and like that contributed to the points. Like that was a really interesting application of like Web3 tools to me, because it catered to both. Like it was catering to the Web3, but it wasn't forgetting the nuance of what it means to do an event in person. Or like I just did March Madness, the women's tournament, Tourneytown, and we had Degree put on kind of a AR thing where like you would like strap a sensor to your body, and then you would be on the screen and like running through a basketball course, but you were actually running through a course. And like we had like cardboard cutouts to represent like what were in the video game. And so you got to see people interacting with this technology, but it was also interesting for the spectators. And I think that's really critical when it comes to like brands wanting to invest, because like one person can interact with like the tech component at once, but how do you make their interaction with tech compelling to other people?
Right.
And then I work with a lot of artists kind of on a consulting side, and like explaining to them that like, one, Web3 offers a lot of potential, even if you're just using it as your certificate of authenticity, because by facilitating your transactions through the blockchain, you enable yourself to get a commission when it's resold. And then also kind of, I think, unlocking the fundraising power in Web3. Like, I think that if you look at really famous artists, like art historians are able to speak to who their patrons are and like who were the people who supported them early on in their career. And I think Web3 offers a really unique way for artists to give kind of a token of patronage to people who want to put up funding for their projects in a really interesting way. And then I think the whole I mean, there's so much with Web3, because like that's not even getting into like what DAOs offer us, and like what kind of cultural impacts like these bigger DAOs that now have like more capital, like those DAOs are functionally becoming like brands, and how those brands choose to activate and execute, I think is going to be really key in their lasting power. So like being the person who's like, hey, new Web3 brands, like I've been doing activations with established Fortune 500 companies for years. Like if you guys want to operate similarly to those people, here are some of the tools and strategies that they use. Here are some of the vendors that are really known to execute with precision.
Gotcha.
That's a little bit of a rant, sorry.
No, that was great. It was great. So when you're talking with these brands and these artists, what is like the biggest resistance that you find?
I think that literacy around what the different terms mean is the biggest hurdle. I think that when you don't have someone walk you through not only like what the terms mean, but like how crypto came first, or not crypto, blockchain came first, because that was the tool, and like these different crypto and metaverse and like all these like iterations of that are harnessing the ability to like own a non-tangible asset, which was like enabled by the blockchain. I think that piece of like, oh, I get it now, it's like really the hardest step, because once you get people over that like lack in understanding, they're like, it's just like a title of a car, like it's just like a which is just like one part of it. But I think like when you're able to have people have like an abstract concept relate to a tangible item that they're experienced with, then like all the other components become less scary. I think
Right.
like the older the person, the more metaphors I need when I'm like explaining something. But I think everyone has the capacity to understand these tools in other contexts, and helping them like bridge those to a digital sphere is I think like the rub. But I think once that happens, people are like, this is so cool. Like, how do we utilize it?
Right. Before you mentioned music that, or not necessarily music DAOs, but you mentioned DAOs in general. How do you think DAOs will play a role in the music industry? From my eyes, I think they'll be a big part of the music industry's integration into Web3.
I think that it'll happen in two pieces. Like, I think there'll be people who like directly approach the functions of the music industry through a DAO perspective. But I also think that like we are creating these large scale capital organizations that like have a lot of fiscal power, that are interested in creatives making art in a way that is different than any of the art spheres. Like, you see this now with visual art, but I think that like as these bigger DAOs that have kind of been innovating in this space gain more capital, they're going to have more diverse interests. I think you're going to see big DAOs funding music studios. I think you're going to have them picking fellows who are doing music projects that they're putting up and helping promote. I think you're going to see that with TV too. And I think in the same way that you like watch a really amazing creative like Issa Rae take one show and build it into a net, like a studio, you're going to see these DAOs that are going to create studios in the name of the DAOs. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see a Friends with Benefits studio. I wouldn't be surprised to see Bathing Ape Productions. Like, I think that once you create kind of a conglomerate of wealth that is by nature run by a group of people, you're going to see that starts outputting a lot of different iterations of creativity in ways that we already know. And I think that's kind of going to be the bridge. It's like, even like kind of, to me, a little bit cheesy things, the Bathing Ape Yacht Club burger joint in LA. It's like, you're one, bringing people who are interested in that DAO out, but there are also people who are like, I'm interested in a burger, and I heard this was a good, like, and I think when you create those spaces that people are like, that they're not seeking out Web3, it's just part of what they're already experiencing, it's going to have more people curious and like learning about it.
I agree with that 100%. I didn't think about it like that. I think doing both the physical and the digital aspect of it are definitely crucial to bridging the two. Kind of going back to your roots, if you could give like yourself one piece of advice when you first started working on productions and shoots, events, festivals, things of those nature, what would it be?
I think that what I would tell a younger producer version of myself is to try to get past the crushing disappointment of making a mistake faster so I could get to the learning. I think that like when I was like younger in my career, I so deeply wanted to do a great job every time that when I would make mistakes, which were, you never make the same mistake twice in production because it hurts your heart. And I think that like, if I could recognize in the moment that hurt would fade and try to get to the learning part of it, that would have saved me just a lot of like tears and stress and like probably a few years off my heart. But I think like there's not, and I would tell myself to drink more water. I'd be like, and get insoles for my shoes. Like it would be like comfort tips and like stop beating yourself up because you're going to do stupid things and they're going to be helpful in the future. Like, I can't think of a single mistake I've made on a production that I've repeated. And like you make so one of my first productions, I sent a black car that was supposed to get a very prominent black basketball player to the wrong address.
Oh no.
And I will never do that again. I just would, I have nightmares about it. I mean, we still got him in a black car. He still got to the event on time, but there was like 42 minutes where I didn't know if that was going to happen, and I never want to live in those 42 minutes. And so like I checked transportation 5 or 6 times, and then once in the middle of the night before the day of, just like a nice 4 a.m. check.
Yeah.
Like a sane person does. But I think like things like that, like getting to the like, don't ever make that a mistake again, and past the like, I'm a terrible person because I messed this up, would be good advice for a young Sophie.
Gotcha. So kind of shifting away from music related or work related things, you're staying in Chicago, and as far as I know, Chicago is like your city. What's your favorite part of the city? What's your favorite part of Chicago?
Oh, I love Chicago. I think it's the best. I think that my favorite part about Chicago is that people have a pride for the city as a whole, but I think people have a real connection to the specific neighborhoods that they live in, and like the way that they have gotten to experience the city. And I think that, I mean, Chicago has a lot of problems, right? Like it is one of the most racist, least equitable cities in the United States. Like the police here are absolutely brutally violent. Like I think the policy in a lot of places, they like need a lot of reform, but people love their city. Like nobody from Chicago is not like that's my city and I love it. I also think it's just like, it's gorgeous, and like Chicago is brutally cold in the winter, but it's gorgeous in the summer. And I think it kind of inspires a creative mindset, because it's like, okay, winter, go home, go in your corner, work, plan. And it's like summer, you get to see everyone like come into a new butterfly almost every season. It's like, yo, what have you been working on? I see you going crazy on IG. Like, please tell me about it. Like, like, oh my goodness, you've been home for 3 months writing an album. When's it coming out? Like, that's the excitement of being in Chicago. It's the cyclical nature of like when people come in and out of their houses.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's similar to Chicago is one of my favorite cities. My family is from there. Part of my family's from there, so I visited there a lot as a kid. So I love the city. Living in Washington for a bit, I did recognize it's similar with the weather. With the weather, it's like in the winter you're inside, it's raining, it's cold, and then in the summer everyone's out and having a good time and like connecting back after a long winter. So that's great.